I audible clearly?
Sir, you are audible, sir. If you kindly make your this presentation on.
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay. And you're able to see the slides on my screen, right?
Yes, sir. Kindly keep it full screen mode.
Yeah. Are you able to see it now?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so firstly, a very good morning to everyone. I hope everyone is healthy and safe. I know these are very tough times, and most importantly, to have this kind of a conversation over a webinar, as opposed to sitting with all of you in a room, is definitely, you know, something very new to a lot of people. Because when you're in the class, you're engaging with a lot of people. So as much as possible, we're going to try and keep the same ambience and the same rapport here. So as much as possible, we're going to try and interact. So if you have any questions, we can wait until the end of the session. Or if you think your question just cannot wait and you want an answer right now, you can definitely put down your question in the chat box, or you can raise your hand, and everybody can hear the question that you have. So, shall we begin?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you have the liberty to unmute when you want, and I would definitely request you to unmute only and only when you essentially have something to add, or when you have some questions that you want to ask in this regard. Okay. So if we can begin now. I believe you've already had a session on this front, right? You've discussed about what are the rights of a patentee. So can somebody tell me what the rights of a patentee are? Anyone? I believe you've had a webinar on this yesterday as well, right?
So it's the exclusive right. The right of the patentee is that he can exclude others from using, selling, or making his invention.
Fantastic. So under what section is this being covered?
I think section
48.
48.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay. So it is an exclusive right to use, to make, to sell, to offer for sale, to import. And what does this apply to?
Sir, it is applied to process.
Processes,
Not
product,
product as well as the process by which the product can be made.
Fantastic, fantastic. Okay, so now you understand what the rights of a patentee are, right? Now we have the question as to what is the license. So when you build a house, okay, let's say you build a ground floor for yourself and you have a first floor that is vacant. What can you do with this first floor?
We can rent it, sir.
You can rent it out. Okay. Can you maybe also sell that particular portion to somebody?
Yes, sir.
If I wish.
If you wish, right? So very similar. In patents, you have what are referred to as licenses. Now, what do licenses do? It is in effect a permission to do, use, or own something. For example, when I give out a portion of my house on rent, what am I doing the tenant? I'm basically allowing him to. Yes, please.
Yes, sir. Sir, we are just allowing the person for making the use of patent.
for making use of the patent. Very good. So you have several kinds of patent licenses, to be honest. But then if you can broadly divide them, they're into two categories. They're called exclusive licenses or non-exclusive licenses. So what do I mean by exclusive license?
So it is given to only one person and not many.
Okay, so you're saying it will exclude everybody else.
Yes.
All right. And what about a non-exclusive license?
Like it can be given to multiple people at a time.
Fantastic. So when I talk about a compulsory license, is this an exclusive license or a non-exclusive license?
It's a non-exclusive.
It is a non-exclusive type.
Non-exclusive.
Given by the government.
Why would you
Yes,
say that?
given by the government.
Given by the government. Okay, but why? Why can't they give an exclusive license? Why should they give out a non-exclusive license?
To meet the demand of the public at large, sir.
Very good. So let's say if I am able to meet the public demand at large, okay, I am a manufacturing company. I promise that I am able to meet the public demand.
The person having the patent could not meet the demand, as well as he has not capacity to fulfill all the requirement of the public at large.
Very good. Let's say I have the capacity to do it. Okay. And I want to be the exclusive licensee. Why can't I get a license?
Maybe you are not providing at the affordable prices.
I am doing everything that is possible. So I'm giving it to you at a reasonable price. I'm giving it to you at a reasonable cost. I'm giving it to you in reasonable quantities. So I'm fulfilling every aspect. So why should the government give a non-exclusive license? Why can't it give an exclusive license that only I should be given that license? What do you think it does?
The rights about the patent remains with the government.
Patent remains with the government. So I'm sure it's probably been discussed, but the patents also bind the government. Yes. So the government cannot use your patent just as and when it wants. It has to seek your permission.
Oh, actually, when it is exclusive license, then everybody else, including the patentee, will be debarred from using the license. So that is why it should not be an exclusive license. It has to be non-exclusive, so that if not one person is doing it, other person can at least do it.
Very good. So essentially, what if I could surmise what you're saying, is that an exclusive license will give you a monopoly right. Correct?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Whereas a non-exclusive will, in fact, make sure that all the requirements of the public are met fully.
Yes. Yes.
And as many people as you have in the market coming out with more and more products, the better it is for the public.
True.
Right? A simple example, when you talk about phones, when the phones came into the picture, they were all very pricey, correct? You would normally get a big handset for around 50,000, 70,000, 80,000. Today we have so many phones in the market, each one with a lower cost. Today everybody can afford a phone. So that essentially happened because you had more people coming into the market. If you give an exclusive license, it will stop people from coming into the market. It will stop people from manufacturing and creating competition. So it will inflate the prices, and then people's requirements are not met adequately. Now, the next question that we have, who can apply for these compulsory licenses? When do they apply for compulsory licenses?
Sir, any person interested?
Very interesting term. What is this any person interested? Is it the same as any interested person?
Both are same.
The person having the capacity to meet the demand, as well as have capacity to apply the patent fully.
Very good. So is there a difference then? Is there a difference between person interested, interested person, or any person? Have you attended the session on opposition to patents?
Yes.
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 So there must be, you must have come across this term, any person interested
Yes.
versus any person.
True.
Yes,
So
sir.
who's any person?
Any person is anybody who need not be in the
Anybody.
same field
Correct.
of the invention. I mean, or he is working with the invention or associated in some way with that particular invention. But
Very good.
if we say any person interested, that person should be in the same field as the invention, working on the invention, or associated with some research or anything related to the invention.
Very good. So perfect. You understand the difference, right? And that is very crucial there. So here under section 84(1), any person interested may apply for issue of compulsory license to whom?
To the controller.
Perfect. To the controller, including the license holder. Now, you as a patentee have given me a license. Okay. But I'm applying for a compulsory license. Can I do this? Although you've already given me a license.
Yes, you can.
Yes, sir. You can.
Because the section says that there's a provision that including the license holder can apply for a compulsory license.
Perfect, perfect. So essentially, even the license holder, even if he is already been granted a license, can apply for issue of a compulsory license. Now, when do you apply for a compulsory license? So this is generally applied after the expiration of 3 years from the date of grant of patent. So you cannot apply for compulsory license before the patent is issued. And even after the patent is issued, you can apply for it only after 3 years from the date of grant of patent. Now what happens is we look at the sections, but we often forget the rules that come into the picture.
Sir, what if any emergency appears before 3 years?
So we are going to go through that also.
Okay.
This is covered in another section. Okay. So there is a corresponding rule, which is rule 96. Now, I understand that we have a lot of people here who are also preparing to give the patent agent examination this time, right? So I understand that sections are important, but many a times we often forget the rules. We say, okay, dealing with sections is enough, but rules, they are essentially what tell you what to do, right? So this is dealt under rule 96. And when you want to make an application for compulsory license, you have to file it through the form 17. So as usual, are there any costs that you think are involved, or can anybody just apply?
There are costs that is for individual 2,400 rupees.
Very good.
Then small entity 6,000 and others 12,000.
Fantastic. So you've answered our question. So the costs are basically, if you can just repeat that for the benefit of the audience, 2,400.
Yes, sir.
For
individuals, it is 2,400 rupees. For
exactly.
individuals,
So it's for individuals as well as
rupees.
startups.
Startups, yeah. Then
okay.
Small entity alone with other natural persons or startup, that is 6,000 and others 12,000.
All right. So are we clear on that? Everybody in the audience?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So now we come down to this whole question of what these reasonable requirements are. Reasonable. You are reasonably doing well. Right? When I say reasonable requirements, what do you think reasonable requirements are? Anyone?
Minimum justifiable.
Minimum justifiable. Is this defined anywhere? When I say reasonable, is there a
No,
definition
sir,
of the
it's
word
not
reasonable
defined.
available anywhere in the Act?
No, no, no.
No.
No, sir.
So you have to basically assume the definition. But for reasonable requirements, it is specifically mentioned as to when deem requirements as not satisfied. Most importantly, when I talk about reasonable requirements, of whom? Reasonable requirements of one person or reasonable requirements of everyone?
Public.
Of
Public by large, at large.
public by large. Very good. So when you look at section 88.7, it gives you this entire detailed list and grounds on which you can apply for compulsory license, and when especially these reasonable requirements are not deemed satisfied. So the first condition is due to the refusal by the patentee to grant license. Now, because the patentee is not granting you license, one of the following situations happen. The first one is existing trade or industry, or the development establishment of any new trade or industry, or the trade or industry of any person trading or manufacturing in India is prejudiced. So 3 conditions, right? When I say existing trade, what are we talking about? Give me an example if anyone's got an example.
So can you please repeat the question?
So when I say existing trade or industry, what am I referring to?
Any existing company which is already in the business, like pharma companies or any business houses, those who are serving the public by large.
Very good. So also, dear friends, you need to pardon me here because what I've mentioned here is section 88.7, but this was supposed to be section 84 clause 7.
Yes,
a lot
sir.
of them have actually pointed out to me on the chat window as well. So I'll be making corrections to this, and then when I send across the final slides, that change will be there. So please excuse me for that. Yeah. So you were telling me any existing trade or industry or development and establishment of any new industry or trade.
Yeah, whether it's small or big, anyone.
Okay. So that is the first thing. Secondly, you have when a demand for a patented article has not been met to an adequate extent or on reasonable terms. Pretty simple. When you have an article that is patented, but you're not supplying these in adequate quantities or on reasonable terms. Now, what are these reasonable terms that these people are talking about here?
So generally what we have seen it is a very common case for life-saving drugs, etc. Those who have been manufactured outside India. So the demand versus the supply, keeping the public by large in the mind, it doesn't, it's not get, the thing does not get meet.
Very
and
good.
Also the affordability of the
Yes.
common people and the public by large, it's not sensible. That thing does not meet
Okay.
the expectation of the giant pharma companies and the capability of the common people for developing or so underdeveloped countries. So there comes this kind of drift, and that is, I guess, acts as a basis for the compulsory license kind of thing to bring in the picture.
Okay.
That's what
So,
I.
but then when you talk about these as a matter, so how would it hamper the development of a new industry?
So they have their own reasons, because by this time we all know that development of any crucial drugs, it takes it involves lots of money, as well as the time, and the all kind of investment done by the company. So it's their long time hard earned thing, they get as in the form of a drug. So that is why they have their own justification to charge the high price for those kind of uh, life-saving drugs, etc.
Okay.
So this
So,
kind of understanding
okay.
by the giant companies, and but the same is not applicable for the common people. So they are they don't have the resources to meet to buy those kind of drugs or those kind of articles at very high price.
Very
And
good.
in the scenario like the epidemics or life-saving drugs like cancer-saving drugs, etc. So that there comes this kind of problem: the affordability versus the manpower and the money and the R&D and the time involved by the pharma companies. So this difference is the root cause behind everything.
So, how many of you agree that, well, compulsory licensing is something that is necessary in today's context, especially in the COVID situation that is there across? How many of you believe that a compulsory licensing mechanism would be helpful to the public?
Sir, if we just only think about the one party,
Yeah.
if we are on the beneficiary side, I'm talking on behalf of a public by large and the common people and not so economically established people.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, this is the most important thing bring by the government in favor of the public. But if you just go on the other side of the table and you think about the justification and the questions raised by the investor company, the pharma companies, so they are also valid in their points. The questions and the objections raised by those companies with respect to the compulsory licensing. So
Very
even
good.
I was about to ask you this question: what you have to say when we came to know that there is only one case of compulsory license in India, keeping
Right.
in the history of our Patent Act in the mind, and the diverse nature and the so many of the population of our country. Why it is so? There is only one case of Bayer versus Netco company, which is known for the this compulsory licensing. What is the reason behind? What is what you have to say as an expert of the IP field? Uh,
Yeah.
I would like to listen your take on this.
Definitely. So we're going to have a discussion on that, and we're going to involve as many people as possible in the audience as well.
Because if we listen to IP professionals, then
Yeah.
they are like this stake or this step taken by the government is not favoring the big companies, the big pharma companies, and it is a kind of a discouraging thing for them.
Correct.
This step or this particular section is a discouraging thing for giant pharma companies to apply patent and get into the business in India. So which is also it not in the favor of the company. But
All
if
right.
we think about the common people affordability and all those problems stated in section 88.4 in favor of the compulsory licensing, so this is also quite justified. And since the companies are given the 3 years of time period to for work in order to bring their patent in the working situation, if they are not at all willing to get working of their patent for 3 years, so what is wrong if the government wants to grant the compulsory license for their patents. So the balance need to be strike for both the parties. And what I'm feeling for the generic companies like Natco or any other company, they are this is my personal feeling that they always want to take the advantage of this clause and the situation, and on the name of the interest of the public by large, they are not ready to pay the respective patent holder companies the requisite amount of the money which they are which they deserve. So if someone is wanting to take the advantage of the situation, this is also not right, whether it is a small company or a generic company or anyone else. So you should not take the advantage of any particular clause. If it is, you should just try to go with the positive side, not to take the advantage of the situation. This is what I have to say. The patent holder must be awarded with the right amount of the money for the compulsory licensing, and the patentee must be just to think about obtaining the patent, about the working of the patent within the three years of time period.
Very good.
That's
Perfect.
all, sir.
So I think what we'll do is definitely, I think we'll have a lot of disagreements at the end of this. So I want to make sure we have a nice debate on this, so we are able to reach and make this as interesting as possible and get as many opinions as possible on this. All right. So I'll just finish this off as quickly as possible. Now, you've obviously, while I took the pause screen, I managed to fix the typo here. So I've made sure that it is 84.7. I apologize for that once again. And all right. So continuing with that further, you have clause 84, subclause 7. All right. You're talking about a market for export is not being supplied or developed. Why should you create a market for export? Your need is to satisfy India, correct?
Yes, sir.
So why should you create a market for export?
To encourage foreign trade.
To encourage foreign trade.
To just increase the horizon of the business, and to just it's all about the business, nothing else.
Correct. See, at the end of the day, you get a patent to do what? Essentially to commercialize, to make money out of it.
Definitely.
Right? So when I say a market for export needs to be created, I'm making sure that what invention I have is getting as much revenue as possible, not just to you, but also to the nation. Therefore, it's important when a market for export is not being supplied or developed. And that is why it would fall under reasonable requirements. Now, the fourth condition is establishment or development of commercial activities in India is prejudiced. Essentially, what you're talking about here is how the grant of a patent could prejudice any commercial activity that is being carried out here in respect of non-patents. That is given further clearer in 84.7b. So if due to the conditions imposed by a patentee in a license, or if by purchase, hire and use of patented articles or process, the manufacture, use or sale of materials not protected by the patent is prejudiced. Now, what is this prejudiced? When I say something is prejudiced, and especially when I ask you when something not protected by the patent is prejudiced.
Impacted.
Impacted. Impacted in what way? A good way, bad way?
Biased. Bad way.
In this context, at least, it is in the bad way, right? So when you have a patent, and by virtue of this patent, you are able to affect products which are not covered in this under this patent, then in such a condition, reasonable requirements are deemed to be not met. Now 84.7c, if the patentee imposes any of the following conditions in his license: to provide exclusive grant back, prevent any challenge to validity of patent, or coercive package licensing. So when I say exclusive grant back, what does this mean?
Sir, exclusive grant back is a license under which a party grants another the right to use the patent under the condition that the licensee agrees to grant the licensor license with respect to any improvement to that patent made by the licensee.
Very good. But my problem here is, so let's say if I have a house, okay? Now you've obviously discussed about the different kinds of patents. So can somebody tell me very quickly what are the different kinds of patents that you can file?
So, process and product patents.
That is in general. And what are the type of applications that you have?
PCT, international, national phase.
Very good. Any more?
Convention application.
Okay. And?
Divisional application.
Additional application.
Provisional and complete.
Provisional complete.
Additional.
Patent of addition.
Yes. Patent of addition. So what is a patent of addition given for?
Sir, any improvement over the parent patent.
Any improvement over the parent patent. Correct. So now, who can file for a patent of addition? The person who makes the improvement or the patentee?
The patentee only.
Patentee. Same applicant.
I mean, see, I am the one who is coming up with the improvement, the modification. Why should the patentee file it?
Because patentee is the whole sole owner of the patent.
Okay.
Someone else is filing, then he has to go for a different patent.
He has to go for a different patent.
You cannot.
No, the question is why can't I file a patent of addition?
If the improvement is substantially increment in the previous invention, then you can apply for a different patent. If I am not the parent in the original inventor.
Correct.
If I am the original, if I am the original,
making improvement or modification, that is not substantial. It is good enough, worthy of a patent of addition. But I am somebody who's sitting in Australia or somebody in Japan coming up with this invention, okay, with this modification. So why is it that I can't file a patent of addition?
that is the extension of the work done by someone else.
Extension of work. Okay. I mean, let me put it very simply. So if you have a house that you build, okay, will you allow somebody else to build upon that house?
No.
No, sir.
Pretty simple answer, right? So as you definitely rightly pointed out, and you pointed out these to me in absolute technical terms. So a patent of addition cannot be filed by anybody else apart from the patent applicant himself.
Yeah, right.
But don't you think that is sort of saying the same thing about exclusive grant back? So if anybody comes up with any modifications or improvements, has to give the license back to the patentee. Do you think some way it is limiting the scope?
Yes, sir, it is limiting the scope as the patent of addition is remain alive up to the 20 years from the parent itself.
Patent of addition. Hello?
Yes, sir, patent of addition.
Okay. So what did you say the term of patent of addition was?
20 years from
20 years from?
The parent patent.
Very good. All right. So we're clear on that. And we've also understood what an exclusive grant back is. All right. Essentially what you're saying is, if once I give you a license, you make any improvements or modifications, then you must exclusively license it back to me. So that is a restriction on, one word if I can use is innovation. The second thing is prevent any challenge to validity of the patent. So this is pretty simple. When I say to prevent any challenge to the validity of the patent, if you are a license holder, right, and the patentee says, no matter what, you cannot challenge my patent. So such a condition is a restriction. And therefore, if such a deed is done by the patentee, then again, it falls under section 84(7)(c), and reasonable requirements are said to be not met. The last one is coercive package licensing. What is this coercive package licensing?
Like if some licensor is giving you a license for a particular product, then he will force you to take license of the related products. Like besides the main license, you will have to buy the other licenses as well.
Fantastic, fantastic. So I understand that everybody is aware of these. So the coercive packaging license is essentially what a friend just mentioned here, where the patentee imposes that, fine, you take this invention, you take this patent, but along with this, you must take the other patent also. So this is what is also referred to as bundling. Now, Microsoft, when it started off, was very famous for this because it used to tie up all of its products and you had to purchase them. Without them, the system would be quite useless. So it used to tie up and bundle these programs and softwares with the system, and then you had to. So coercive package licensing is essentially the same thing, where you're forced, you're coerced into licensing something that you don't really require, may or may not require, but the patentee says you need to take this also. The patented invention is not worked in the territory of India on a commercial scale to an adequate extent or work to the fullest extent that is reasonably practicable. Now, when I say not worked, I believe you had a session yesterday on working of patents. So when I say working of a patent, does it have to be commercial or can it be non-commercial also?
It may be non-commercial as well.
Non-commercial as well. So, but when I speak about compulsory licensing, the terminology used here is not worked in the territory of India on a commercial scale.
Right.
So why do you think there is this sort of a disparity? And what do I mean? Essentially, what do I mean by working of a patent?
Sir, because any patent with commercial potential only will fit for this compulsory licensing.
Okay.
If it's not commercially viable at all, then why one would like to obtain the compulsory license for the same?
What if I made my product available without any commercial benefit to me?
Anyone, the one who is looking for any kind of compulsory licensing, he or she might be doing it for some kind of business thought in the mind. So if a patent is not having any commercial angle, then it is of no use for the that business personnel.
True. So when we spoke, when you dealt with section 83 yesterday, right, which deals with the general principles applicable to working of patented inventions.
Yes, sir.
Right?
Yes, sir.
So what are the principles that are applicable? What does the very first clause tell you? Why are patents granted?
Patent is granted first of all to provide a monopoly to the inventor, and with the other objectives, it is granted to encourage the inventions and
Very good.
R&D in a particular field, at last keeping the benefit of the public by large in the mind.
Very good. So if you go
Should
back
have
to
been-
section 8, yeah, please.
It should have industrial application also.
Yes. So, Sarbani Gupta, as you've rightly mentioned, to encourage invention and commercialization.
Right.
Now, if you read section 83, clause 8, it says the patents are granted to encourage inventions and to secure that the invention is worked on a commercial scale and to the fullest extent that is reasonably practical. So that is a very clear definition that's given in terms of what is working a patent. So you need to be able to work this on a commercial scale. There are situations, there is no denying that there is no situation that exists where you do not work an invention on a commercial scale. You can work an invention. It might not be on a commercial scale, right? But then when it comes to compulsory licensing, what you're focusing on is the aspect of its commercial viability.
Yeah.
So under 84(7)(d), if the patented invention is not worked in the territory of India on a commercial scale or to an adequate extent, or worked to the fullest extent that is reasonably practicable, in such a case, a reasonable requirement is deemed to be not satisfied. Now, section 84(7)(e), if working of a patent on commercial scale in India is prevented or hindered by importation of patented article from abroad. Can you just explain this to me in very simple terms? Take any random example. Anyone?
Sir, I don't have any relevant example to this, but as a common scenario from the society example, cheap articles imported by imported from outside India, say from China, they always overtake the market of the local vendors, which is not so cheap. This is the common thing we are watching.
Right.
The society. So this kind of situation may arise, always arise, and this is what is being mentioned here in 84(7)(e).
All right. So we will look at this in the case of Natco versus Bayer as well.
Yes.
Right. But what we are essentially, if I could just simply put it, you want to work a patent in India. Okay. Bhavna says, as in case of mobile phones, manufacturers cannot sell their articles cheaper as China made. Yeah, pretty much.
It's applicable to many articles apart. It's not for the mobile phone only. Many more examples are there which we use in our daily life. Yeah.
Correct. So it could be for anything, right? If you have a patent, you want to work this patent in India. But the problem is you're not able to work it because you're importing this patented article from abroad. See, there are lots of things. You have a patent in India. You are the manufacturer. You have the ability to make it in India. But it is cheaper for you to make the product outside and then import it. So to be honest, the Indian Patent Act has actually several years earlier made sure that it talks about Make in India program. Right?
Yeah.
What it's saying is you make in India. You work it in India. In case of importations, if the working of the patent is hampered, then the reasonable requirements are not said to be made. It happens very often. If you ask a manufacturer why they're not making it in India or why they're not manufacturing it in India, they would say that it is far more easier and cheaper to make it outside India and then import it. Right? The cost of working the invention or the patent in India may be higher. and it might not be economically beneficial to the patentee. So he says, okay, I'm going to do this outside and then import it. So that again is a problem to working of patents. Now the next is considerations by the controller on issue of compulsory licenses. Now, if you or I just go and apply to the controller and say, see, there is this article, I want it. I want a compulsory license on it. Do you think the controller will just give it to you? Yes? No?
No.
No. So, firstly, the grounds. Pooja, you have a question? Okay. So, everyone's saying no. Fantastic. When we talk about why are compulsory licenses granted, what were the three conditions? First thing is, reasonable requirements are not satisfied. Second thing is, it's not
Working for 3 years after the grant.
not worked in the territory of India. And the third is, it is not available to the public at a reasonably affordable price. Right? So these three conditions need to be satisfied. One of them at least. So under 84.5, what the controller does is he takes into considerations a lot of things before he issues the compulsory license. The first thing is the nature of the invention. So what is the nature of the invention? How much time has elapsed since sealing of the patent? What are the measures already taken by the patentee to make full use of the invention? So at the start of the session, we had this question about what if there is an urgent requirement, right? What if somebody wants to file for a compulsory license before 3 years? Or there is an extreme urgency. What do we do in such cases? Do we still have to wait for those 3 years? Yeah.
Controller has all the rights to grant the compulsory license before the lapse of this 3 years of time period.
Okay, very good. 3 years is necessary. Sangeeta, right?
So the last line of the slide says clause is not applicable in case of national emergency, cases of extreme emergency, public non-commercial use or establishment of ground of anti-competitive practice by the patent.
Perfect, perfect.
Yeah, right.
Sorry, just a minute. Are you able to see the slide?
Yes, sir, we can see it, but it's not in slideshow mode.
Can you, 1 second. Okay. Is it visible now?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So the clause is not applicable in cases of national emergency, cases of extreme urgency, public non-commercial use, or establishment of anti-competitive practices adopted by the patentee. So Dr. Nalanda wants to know what these anti-competitive practices are. Does anybody from my audience have an answer to what these anti-competitive practices mean?
Like the ones done by Microsoft when it monopolized the Windows operating system software and its applications.
Windows software and its?
Application, I mean, various programs, applications.
You're referring to the bundling?
Yes, sir. One of the
Okay.
anti-competitive practices.
One of the anti-competitive. Any other examples that we have? Might not pertain to patents as such.
So sometimes mergers are done just to like create monopoly.
Very good. So we have Dr. Shrida, who says drastically reducing prices. Vinita says open source. Vinita, can you just let us know why you think open source is an anti-competitive practice? Vinita, are you there? Because it is open for public to make use. Okay. So how many of you agree that open sources can be anti-competitive? Evergreening of patents. Further research and development, okay. So you have a lot of, I'm getting a lot of answers on the chat, which is fantastic, right? So to answer the question as to what is an anti-competitive practice, Dr. Nalanda, there are lots of ways in which you can basically stifle competition in the market. This is actually, in fact, there is a separate act which is called the Competition Act. And under this, you have several things which a business is not supposed to do. So there are a lot of things that are listed as anti-competitive practices. For example, as somebody pointed out, mergers and acquisitions. So you merge a whole lot of companies and you become the dominant player in the market. You will try and eliminate your competition from the market by collating all the companies. If you, to be honest, look at the telecom sector today, somewhere or the other, how many players are you looking at? At one point, we had Idea, Telenor, Uninor, Vodafone, Airtel, and there were so many players in the market. But today, how many players do you think we have? Is an answer? Anyone? Patent hoarding and trolling. Okay.
Airtel and Jio.
Airtel and Jio. And Vodafone is sort of struggling to stay afloat.
True.
Right? So in fact, this was there in the news also earlier, where they mentioned that if Vodafone shuts down, in such an event, there's going to be absolute monopoly for these two players in the market. So they are able to then hike up their prices. Well, to be honest, some of our internet packs have actually priced up, right? So as you keep eliminating competition from the market by, is there any section like Competition Act? Yes, there is a specific act which deals with anti-competitive practices. So it used to be referred to as the MRTP Act. Now it became the Competition Act in 2002.
Sir, is
so
it a part of the Patent Act or?
It is not. But there are certain overlaps. It is not part of the Patent Act. No. So the Patent Act has things like these, which try to stop and curb anti-competitive practices. There was a case between Ericsson, which went with the Delhi High Court and then eventually the Supreme Court, where they discussed about how Ericsson was engaging in anti-competitive practices. So in terms of giving out your licenses also. So you deal with standard essential patents. Of course, these are not the topic of discussion for this session at least. But these are really interesting things to look at when it comes to anti-competitive acts and characters. So combinations are prohibited because they are yeah. So, all right. Now, if we can just switch back to this, we'll have this discussion at the end of the session. All right. So, nature of the invention, time elapsed since filing of the patent, measures already taken by the patentee to make full use of the invention. So, these are a few things that he will basically consider. Now, time elapsed since filing of the patent. I mean, since the grant of the patent. See, sometimes 3 years might not be enough for you to work a patent, to be honest, because you do not have the kind of technology that is there at the moment. So the controller will actually make a check as to whether enough time has lapsed since the patent was granted. Sometimes he might extend it. We're going to talk about the extensions also. So the second thing is the ability of the applicant to work the invention to public advantage. Whether you, as a potential licensee, when you're approaching the controller, do you have an ability to work the invention, or are you just reaching out to the controller because you want a compulsory license? So he will take that into consideration also. The next thing is the capacity of the applicant. By applicant, I mean here the applicant who is applying for the compulsory license, to undertake risk in providing capital and working the invention. The fourth thing is whether applicant has made efforts to obtain a license from the patentee on reasonable terms and conditions, and he has failed. So this is important here. If you have not made any efforts to obtain a license from the patentee, okay, in such a case, your merit for filing this compulsory license application will fall, because you did not take the efforts. When you want to basically license a patent, you will have to sit with the other party, engage them, negotiate. So a lot of things come into the picture here. Your negotiation skills, how tactfully you are able to talk to them, what you're able to extract out of the patent, what is the commercial value, so many questions and so many things to discuss on that front. So whether you have firstly made an effort, if you have not made an effort and if you just want to file for a compulsory license, then it does not make sense. In fact, a compulsory license was rejected on this very ground. So lastly, we've obviously discussed about how this clause is not applicable in cases of national emergency, in cases of extreme urgency, in case of public non-commercial use, or establishment of any ground of anti-competitive practice adopted by the patentee. Now, adjournment of applications for compulsory license. Under section 86, the controller can adjourn the applications for issue of compulsory licenses if he believes two things. One, that the time since grant of the patent is insufficient to work the invention. If the patentee proves that he could not work the invention due to any rule or regulation of the state or central government. So the first one is pretty simple. You have an invention. See, a lot of times when a patent is filed, you are not ready to put this product out into the market on a full scale.
190 to 168, 098.
So the first thing is how much time has elapsed since the grant of a patent. Okay. And is it sufficient? Is it possible to work the invention in this time? So the controller is going to check that. And he will adjourn the application if he thinks that, no, the time since the grant of the patent has been insufficient to work the invention. So it could be 4 years also, it could be 5 years. Depends on the discretion of the controller. And if you are able to prove that no, that the time that was given to them is more than enough and the patent could be worked. On any other situation or instance. Hi, so I think somebody's on, if you can just mute. I believe Manju Tripathi. Yeah, okay. Thank you so much.
No, sir, voice was coming from Kirti Arora, I guess so. She has to mute.
Kirti, hi, would you be able to mute? Okay. So if the patentee proves that he could not work the invention due to any rule or regulation of the state or central government, pretty simple requirements and provisions. So the controller can basically ask or adjourn the application for the compulsory license, but he can do this for a maximum of 12 months. And of course, he will provide the patentee an opportunity as well as the applicant an opportunity and hear them. Now, terms and conditions of compulsory licenses. When a controller issues a compulsory license, there are certain factors which he needs to keep in mind. He must try and ensure that the royalty or remuneration to the patentee is reasonable. So, Rosalima asks me, please explain the time of 12 months will be counted from when. So when you apply this request for compulsory license, the controller is required to dispose of this request within 1 year. Okay. So within 1 year, if the controller does not dispose of, he can basically adjourn the application for a further period of 12 months. So this is from the date of order of the controller and the application that you have made to the controller. Am I clear on that, Rosalima? Okay. So moving on further, the terms and conditions of compulsory license. As we were discussing, the controller must try to ensure that the royalty or remuneration to the patentee is reasonable. The licensee is able to work the invention to the fullest with reasonable profits to him. So you cannot give somebody the license and tell him that, you need to make this invention available for 2 rupees. Where there is no profit to him, it does not make sense. So the controller must ensure that some reasonable profit is given to the licensee also. The invention is available to the public at reasonably affordable prices. So after giving this license out to a potential licensee, it should not so happen that the licensee is producing the same thing at the same price, because of which the reasonable requirements and affordability are affected. So he needs to ensure that the invention is available at reasonably affordable prices to the public once a license is granted. And then obviously we've discussed this, the license is non-exclusive, which means more than one person will be able to make, use, sell, manufacture the invention. The rights are non-assignable. When I say non-assignment of rights, what is this non-assignment of rights? Anybody from the audience who wants to explain this?
The licensee cannot assign to anybody else.
What is this assignment? Like, what is this further assignment that we're talking about?
Means transfer of rights to the third party. I am a compulsory licensee, then I transfer my rights to the third party. Assign my rights to third party. To work the patent.
To work the
patent.
To work the patent. So working
the
by
business out of the invented invention.
All right. Okay. That's right. We cannot further assign the rights to someone else. So essentially, the rights that you would obtain is that of to make, use, sell, offer for sale, import, etc. Right? So exactly, the licensee cannot license it to a third party. So by the way, every time I stop like this, I'm actually looking at my chat window because everybody is providing with their inputs. So I really appreciate that. And I think this is fantastic. The kind of response that I have is really brilliant. So thank you all for being a fantastic audience, by the way. For going further, the license is for as short a term as possible, keeping in mind the public interest. See, the purpose of granting a patent at the end of the day is to make sure that there is progress in scientific invention, innovation. There should be some incentive, right, for a patentee. He needs to make money out of that patent. Now, if you give the license for an entire term period of 20 years, then isn't it going to be difficult for the patentee to make revenue out of it? You need to consider a lot of things. The amount of money that the patentee spends in filing the application, in the R&D that he goes on, in all the prosecution work that happens. I mean, getting a patent is not easy, and also definitely not cheap. Patent is probably one of the most expensive forms of intellectual property. Accordingly, its value is also pretty high, right? So it is unfair if you give a patent license indiscriminately without keeping into mind what the situation at the present is. So it is generally given for as short a term as possible. Okay. Then the predominant supply should be the Indian market. So again, slyly we've slid in the whole Make in India program here. So our predominant objective should be to supply these goods in the Indian market. The licensee can export it if necessary. And the license does not authorize the licensee to import. Because what happens if it gives them the opportunity of importing? We've already discussed this. They will make these inventions outside of India and then eventually import it at a cheaper rate. Although it is commercially beneficial to the licensee, it does not serve the objective of working the patent in India. Now we come to one of the most interesting parts of this webinar, are the case studies. So does anybody know how many compulsory licensing applications or compulsory licenses have been issued in India?
Till now, only one.
Fantastic. And then how many have been applied for? Granted only one?
Not the number, but few more, 2-3 more.
Oh, okay. So have you heard of something called as the USTR Special 301 report?
No, sir, not at all. No, don't have any idea. Please elaborate.
Okay. So the US basically every year pushes out a report in which it basically ranks India. Okay. And it says our IP laws are not beneficial for these pharma giants because we have this whole compulsory licensing clause. Unfortunately, I mean, I might sound a little biased here, but the problem is a lot of countries have a clause of compulsory license, including the US. In fact, the US has probably granted more compulsory licenses than India. But then it has always accused India of trying to undermine the rights of these companies. So you have a lot of sections. You have section 3D, as Disha Soni points out, right? So section 3D basically deals with
non-patentability. Yeah, evergreening of.
Perfect. So that is the first thing that we do not allow. All right.
Yeah,
but then we also have this whole idea of compulsory license. So what the US says is, you know, if you grant a compulsory license, the amount of work, the amount of energy, the amount of time that is invested in this whole R&D process, the amount of money that is spent cannot be recouped. So therefore, the compulsory license provision should not be there. It talks about IP enforcement and, you know, a lot of things. So it's very biased. In fact, we've always been junking the report, but well, yeah, it's just an objective that is out there. So the first case of compulsory license, first and only, in fact, compulsory license granted till date was in the case of Bayer versus Natco. So on the 9th of March 2012, what the controller did was he ruled against the German pharmaceutical giant Bayer Corporation. This ruling was against a drug known as sorafenib tosylate. It was being sold as Nexavar. Now, Nexavar was used in the treatment of advanced stages of kidney and liver cancer. It's a very nice, well-formed, well-framed judgment. So I think if time permits, you definitely must go through this entire case law and take a look at what the court said, because it deals with a lot of things. It talks about working of a patent. It gives you a clarity on what it means by working on a commercial scale, whether import is tantamount to working the patent in India. So a lot of these questions are looked at, right? And in this case, so the drug was launched in 2006. The patentee received the licenses to import and market the drug in 2007. But what Bayer did not do was it did not import the drug in 2008. And in 2009 and 10, it started importing it in very small quantities. It had the capacity to manufacture here in India, or for that matter, even outside. But it never, brought these drugs in sufficient quantities. It was all in small quantities. And the cost of Nexavar's drug was about 2.8 lakhs for 120 tablets. That is a month's course, right? Whereas Natco's generic drug costed about 8,800 for 120 tablets. So seeing that Bayer was not making these drugs accessible to more people, Natco applied for a compulsory license. Of course, Bayer made a lot of arguments against this whole idea. It even approached the court. But its decision was, the controller's decision and the IPAB's decision for that matter, was all upheld by the court. So you see, what happens is, here, this is one of the most perfect cases as far as talking about reasonable requirements and affordable prices are concerned. So because Bayer was not able to meet the public requirement at affordable prices, which is very important, and the invention was not worked in the territory of India to a reasonable extent or to the fullest extent. Mind you, importing is considered as working. But if you see this case, you're talking about importing into small quantities. And therefore, in the judgment, it's clearly listed out that the amount of drugs that Bayer was importing was not sufficient. And the reasonable requirements of the public were not being met. So if you are able to import it and meet the reasonable requirements and provide these drugs at affordable prices, it would still be accounted for. At least you would still have some consideration into the picture. But here, that was clearly not the case. So this was the first and only compulsory license granted till date. And then we have several other cases. There was Emcure Pharmaceuticals versus Roche. So I would like to call this as the second case, but not the second case. Because what happened here was they applied, but then the application was withdrawn. So this was against Roche's drug, which was trastuzumab, commonly known as Herceptin. What happened here was, of course, they said that, Roche's drug is not available to the public and a lot of other things. So what the government intended to cite was Section 92, which talks about, does anybody know what Section 92 talks about? Okay, so Section 92.
Special provision for government, if requires, then.
Very good. Very good. So in cases of basically national emergency, extreme emergency, non-commercial use, the ones that we previously discussed, right? Where when you talk about the considerations of the grant of issue or compulsory license by the controller, when we talk about all of these things, we spoke about how this clause is not applicable in cases of national emergency, extreme emergency, and stuff like that, right? So 92 deals with special provisions for compulsory licenses on notifications by the central government. So here, under this clause, the central government can, by notification, basically ask for or grant a compulsory license. Of course, this was, as I said, withdrawn. So this has no real, meaning. But then again, this was a second instance, so I thought this should be something that you are aware of. And Sarbani, you say CL on exported drug. So that is covered under section 92A, which talks about compulsory licenses for export of pharmaceutical products. And again, not in all circumstances, but certain exceptional circumstances. Now, the second actual compulsory licensing application was between BDR Pharma and Bristol Myers Squibb. So what happened here was the BDR Pharma filed for a compulsory license on March 2013 for Bristol Myers anti-cancer drug Dastanib. So it was rejected by the controller because BDR Pharma could not make out a prima facie case for the issue of compulsory license. And it was basically ruled that, the company failed to make efforts to obtain a voluntary license on reasonable terms and conditions. So because of this, the license was pretty much rejected. Now, the next thing is Lee. Okay, that is not included here, but the third case was between Lee Pharma and AstraZeneca. Again, this was basically rejected because Lee Pharma was not able to produce a prima facie evidence. So Akshay asks me if I can elaborate what is a prima facie case. A prima facie is, if you would like the definition of the word prima facie basically refers to at the first instance. Like when you take a look at a certain given fact, or when something is present to you at the first sight, how does it look to you? So if you're able to prima facie prove that something was achieved or something was not achieved, I mean, that would be a simple example of what prima facie essentially is. Okay, so I was talking to you about Lee Pharma and AstraZeneca. Excuse me. So Lee Pharma, as I believe a lot of you know, is a Hyderabad-based drug manufacturer. All right. What they did was they filed a compulsory licensing application with the controller in 2015. Now, this was made against a drug known as saxagliptin. It was basically used in the treatment of diabetes. Now, this drug was actually granted to Bristol Myers, who then assigned it to AstraZeneca. So Lee Pharma, what it said was AstraZeneca was importing this drug at less than 1 rupee. But when it was selling it, it was charging as much as 45 rupees for each tablet. So when you talk about, a month's dosage or even 30 tablets, it would amount to a lot. So Lee Pharma basically argued that because, they were importing this drug and they were, although the cost was less than a rupee, they were still charging as much as 45 rupees per tablet. And then they said this was beyond the reach of the patient and a lot of things. So then it contended that, AstraZeneca did not make enough efforts to make this drug in India. And, but then at the end of the day, the controller said, see, you're not able to establish a prima facie case for making an order under section 84. So therefore, he then issued a decision against Lee Pharma. And that compulsory license was also rejected. After that, of course, you've had a lot of, touch and go situations where you've had a lot of companies, like for example, there was Merck versus MSD and Sun Pharmaceuticals. So then there was Novartis and Lupin, Bayer and Cadila. So all of these, there were several instances where these companies tried to secure compulsory licenses, or at least had thoughts of compulsory licensing. But then eventually the deal was struck between all of these companies, and to be honest, no other compulsory licensing application has been made. Which brings us to this slide. Who do you think this is? I mean, looking at my profile picture, do you think this is me? I don't mind a yes.
The coronavirus, sir?
Yes. So coronavirus. Do you believe that this is public emergency?
Of course it is.
It is, right? So there is one company called Gilead. Do you know Gilead? Do people know here Gilead Sciences? Okay. So Gilead basically has 3 patents for a drug known as remdesivir. Okay. So in fact, this is as recent as in May. What happened was when the drug was tested, initial drug trials indicate that it was capable of treating. What are we treating here? Our enemy, COVID-19, coronavirus. So they were able. They saw that it was successful in the trial 1. So the first thing that people said was basically there were 2 health advocacy groups. One is Medicine Sans Frontiers, or MSF. They generally advocate for it's always a debate between patients versus patents. So MSF is always in favor of the patients, and for obvious reasons, the pharmaceutical companies are in favor of patents. So 2 health advocacy groups basically reached out to the government and sought a revocation on the patent of remdesivir. Gilead, fortunately or smartly, basically signed non-exclusive licensing agreements with around 5 generic drug makers based in India and Pakistan. About 4 of them are based in India and 1 is based in Pakistan. So what it said was you can make these drugs and sell them in about 127 countries. So this was a very close case. If, let's say, Gilead had said that, no, we cannot grant this patent, or we cannot grant a license to this, especially a non-exclusive license, what you would have probably seen is a case of the 4th compulsory license application being made. And here it would have come through not just a third party, but also probably under Section 92, where the government could have said, listen, we need this drug for the benefit of the public, and therefore we need to make sure that this is available fully and to the maximum extent to the public. So that brings us to the close of this presentation. I'd be really happy if you have any questions and if we have anything to discuss. So I understand that we had so much to discuss in the beginning. We spoke about opinions on, pharmaceutical companies versus patients, and how each of these, who's right. So how many of you think that compulsory licensing as a provision is, not necessary? And how many of you feel that, no, it's very important, very necessary, and we should be issuing more compulsory licenses? Is there anyone who says that compulsory licenses need not be issued? Anyone? So everybody agrees that compulsory licenses should be issued. But tell me, what is the drawback of this compulsory license? If you were a company that is into manufacturing something, how is it beneficial?
For a company which has invested lots of money in R&D, suppose it is an anti-cancer drug, we can imagine like how much money that company has spent on its R&D, including from starting and then trial on the animals and human beings. if
Right.
it is compulsorily licensed by some country like India, Pakistan, and if they are not supplied with the proper royalty, so
Mhm.
they will be discouraged.
Right.
They will be discouraged for further inventions, and they will also be keep quiet. Like if we are not getting our money back, which we invested,
True.
why do we do research?
True. So this is probably one of the most important questions that every pharmaceutical company asks, right? As to whether compulsory licensing. Yeah, please go ahead.
So one thing, keeping in the mind the drift between the pharma company and the company, the one who's looking for the compulsory license for so and so reasons.
Mm-hmm.
All the all the important countries, okay, they all have lots of money on the name of the public health, etc., funds and everything.
Yeah.
So why not government intervenes in between the two parties? And why not the government is taking the step and the role to ensure to fulfill the demand of the patent holder and to just strike the balance between the two, the patent holder and the company, the one who is applying for the compulsory license. Always the problem is that the company who is applying for the compulsory license is not willing to pay that much amount which is sought by the patent holder company. So that rest amount of the money, which is not the compulsory licensing seeking company is not able to pay, that rest amount of the money can be taken care by the respective governments, the one who is about to grant the compulsory license. So by going in that manner, I think the negativity arise out of this compulsory licensing act can be nullified to some extent. This is my point of view.
Right. So I have a lot of in fact points that are provided here by everybody else. Like for example, Priyanka says, okay, so Kashmira says pharma companies would say that compulsory licensing should not be issued. Manju says it's important, but needs to draw a balance between the patentee and the compulsory license applicant. Bhavna says, in case where a patentee is just holding right in Indian territory but not giving any benefit to the country, then compulsory licensing should be enforced. Vinita says, India will lose PCT patent filing via national phase entry by many big foreign pharma players. So, Vinita, what if I could just suggest? I mean, probably at the end of this conversation, I managed to write an article in 2015 on this whole issue of compulsory licensing, where it's been dealt very as comprehensively as possible. And you'll realize that despite the provisions of compulsory license, we've had an increase in pharma filings rather than a decrease, or for that matter, it being steady. And as we discussed, we had a lot of questions about, why does the government not intervene? And this is basically something from a marketing perspective. Government does not intervene into business transactions unless it is absolutely necessary. I mean, this is if you consider the economics perspective, government intervention does not happen. It is not recommended. Because you see a lot of things when we discuss about regulation of prices, regulation of contracts. So, this sort of stifles the competition and it does not provide a level playing field. So the government ensures that it does not involve itself in the market unless it is absolutely necessary. And as far as deals or licenses between two companies are concerned, we dealt with the appropriate sections, right? When we spoke about the terms and conditions for compulsory licensing, and when we spoke about 84(7) of reasonable requirements, or for that matter, when we spoke about how the controller must take into consideration certain things before issuing the compulsory license. So these measures and checks are all in place. When the controller issues the compulsory license, he makes sure that the patentee gets reasonable royalty. it does not so happen that he'll say, no, you're going to get only this much money. So there is a decision that they make. And I believe there was a question in the chat window when somebody had asked me, how are these royalty fee licenses or rates calculated? Now, there are different steps. There are different ways. It depends specifically on a business-to-business transaction. For example, if you're talking about compulsory licensing in, let's say, phones. I mean, phones are important for all of us, right? So if tomorrow somebody says, we need to make phones available to every person, so we need to issue a compulsory license. So in such a case, you'd be able to probably see that a lot of factors are taken into consideration. For example, the cost of assembly and the other associated patents which are filed along with this application. So a lot of considerations in terms of pharmaceuticals also. The controller is checking as to how much effort has been made by the patentee in terms of working the invention, right? How much of has been put in. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt at this point. As you mentioned, and we have seen in the Patent Act also, government always try, they say that they always try to assure the right amount of royalty to the patent holder. If it is true, then why the pharma companies and the patent holders and the stakeholders, they always criticize the government with respect to this compulsory licensing act? If they are getting the reward in the name of on the name of the royalty and whatever the thing is, so if everything is taken care of actually, then why the whole this noise is all about? If the government is taking the decision in favor of the public by large, and if the patent holder companies are about to get the royalty what they deserve, so then why this all discussion and the criticism and the blame game is there in the picture? So what is the true picture which we are not able to see? If you just can elaborate that picture, what is the main reason behind that? Because I have always heard from so many people that none of the companies are liking this act, and it's actually discouraging. If we thought on from the other side of the table, it's actually discouraging a step for the companies, those who are involved in the R&D and the marketing of the life-saving drugs, vaccines, etc. So they are also right. So what is the true picture? What we are missing here? If everything is taken care by this particular section of the act, then why the whole problem arises in that way?
So I have a very simple question. For example, what is reasonable to you might not be reasonable for me, right? So that difference between what is considered reasonable for you and what is considered reasonable for me is what is the cause of the issue. For example, everybody wants to make a profit. If I want to sell my drugs for 45 rupees per tablet, and you say, no, you have to do it at the cost of 10 rupees. Because I believe 10 rupees is a reasonable price. I am taking into consideration all aspects. I've taken how much of, what is going to cost you to make this drug, to manufacture it, to put it out into the market, sell it, the logistics, everything into consideration. And then I say, this 10 rupees or 15 rupees is the MRP, is the maximum retail price. But my profitable price is 45 rupees. So if you are basically, excluded from earning that sort of a profit, I think anybody would say no to it. Also,
it should not happen. It looks like it's all about the money, the one looking for and the one who is ready to pay for. So this difference needs to be taken care of, the 10 rupees and the 45 rupees difference. And that seems to be the only solution.
Yes. So we'll just have this discussion. So Dr. Manu is just letting us know that he has a meeting to attend to. So if we can just take a group photo at the moment, if probably all of you could switch on your videos.
So
and
sorry
we take this.
Sorry to means since we were having very beautiful discussions, but I'm sorry that our minister has called very urgent meeting. So I have
no worries, sir. No worries.
At 12:15 sharp. So with your kind permission, we will take a group photo with all of the participants. In fact, these all participants are very nice and means raised lot many queries to our speakers, and that's why we got a good bunch of speakers in our this patent webinar series. So thanks a lot to all our participants, and of course to Gaurav Mishra sir from Banana IP. You have raised,
thank you, sir.
You have answered queries in a very nice way, and in fact, from the very beginning, you have taken the questions. So I hope most of the queries on this compulsory licensing have been answered. So with your kind permission, we will take a group photo and then we will close the session today itself.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So I request all the participants, if you can kindly you switch on your videos, please. May I request all the participants, if they are able to kindly switch on their videos, please, and if you can kindly also click on your with your mobile cameras so that we can share it also.
Sir, I wanted to know how come this is the last day, Manu sir, because you said that I thought it was still the 7th.
So since we have planned accordingly, so by default by Zoom, so Zoom के अंदर वो एक link आता है, then for 1 week उसने उसको close किया. Otherwise, today is the last session.
Today is the last session. Okay, thank you, sir.
Just a minute. So we will take another, and if to participants also, if you can kindly take the photos and can share on my mail ID also, na? So then we can tweet on social media.
Put the photos still.
So thank Gaurav Mishra sir for a nice presentation.
Thank you,
and
sir.
of
Thank you
course,
for the opportunity.
in future also, I will request our participants, if they want any specific session, please let us know, and we will be happy to conduct that session also. So for as of now, so we will close this webinar series on Patent Act. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you provide the link of the article which you had written in 2015?
You can just basically look for compulsory licensing in India, and I mean, just type my name. It'll probably be there in the first page results.
Fine. Thank you.
So, and if you have any queries, you can definitely write to me on gaurav@bananaip.com.
Okay.
So, yeah, I've just shared that on the chat window as well.
Okay, sir.
I'm available to you in terms of, and also apologize for the, confusion between the sections. That should not have happened, audience, by the way.